In 1988, my dad brought me to the very first EAA convention that I was able to attend. The first of many. I've gone almost every year since. I'm still mad at them for letting me walk out of the house with those socks. But back then they knew they couldn't argue with me about anything, and clothing was one of those things. We toured the whole grounds for one day. My dad had to actually join EAA so that we could get on the flight line. And so because of that, I got 12 months of Sport Aviation magazine, which, since my family didn't fly, I was the main reader of that magazine for several years. There were airplanes I didn't know existed all over at EAA. And so each year I was able to go there and take pictures and learn everything that I possibly could about aviation. I remember my dad kind of felt bad because we couldn't really afford really big RC models. He worked for a nonprofit organization, basically in the social work field. And so we lived comfortably, but we didn't really have a whole lot of wiggle room to work with in the budget. And so RC was a little bit out of the question. And but he said, but you know what, we live 2 hours away from the biggest air show in the world. And that's the least that we can do, is go there and enjoy that. Eventually, I did get a chance to ride full scale at the Bay Flyers Model Club meeting one month. I think it was 1989, so I would have been 11 years old. One of the club members had a Breezy ultralight. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically a structure that looks a lot like that metal structure up there. One of my friends called it a TV antenna, or household plumbing. It's got a Cub wing on it and a Cub tail and a Continental engine up on the back, and you basically sit out there in the open. And he had this Breezy, and he was moving to Canada, and he was going to sell the airplane, and he said, one last chance for anybody in the club. He offered a ride in the Breezy for a door prize. Because every month we had little door prizes. We could win glue and razor blades and things like that. Well, 2 people got their names drawn, and they passed this up. And I'm just sitting there going, are you kidding me? Because to me, this meant more than anything in the world. And my name was the 3rd name drawn, and I grabbed that card, and I said, I'm going for an airplane ride. And when my parents found out that I was going to ride in this Breezy, they weren't exactly thrilled about the idea. So my mother said, why don't you take a ride in a real airplane first, just to see if you like it? I said, okay, if you're going to make me. So we went on a half-an-hour discovery flight at the local airport, Cherryland Airport in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, with a pilot. I never did learn his name, and that was my very first airplane ride. And there we're breaking ground. I still remember looking out the window, seeing that wheel leave the pavement, going, I can't believe I'm actually flying in an airplane. And we flew over town and saw my house, and it was just absolutely wonderful. Right after that trip, I came down with walking pneumonia. Somehow, in the month of June. It's right before my birthday. And we waited around for a couple of weeks for this to clear up. And I was on antibiotics, and it just wasn't quite going away. And Ron was moving a week. It came down to a point where it was the last weekend Ron was going to be able to give me a ride in this airplane. And so my parents dressed me up in my winter coat and a hat, and they put the goggles on me, and they put me on this Breezy, and they let me go anyway. And now that I think back on that, if I was a parent, I'd be hard-pressed to do that. But they knew how much it meant to me, and so they let me do it. And that's me in the back seat. You can barely see my hand sticking out as I was waving when we took off. That's the first time I touched the controls of an airplane. We were flying over the bay. I remember looking down at the bridge over here and the boats in the water. And he said to me in the intercom, do you want to fly it? And I said, of course. And so I took hold of the stick and did a gentle turn. And I remember him taking his hands and feet off the controls. He's sitting in the front of me there. And I remember seeing him sitting like this to show me that, yes, I was flying the airplane. Again, a moment I will never forget. So I was hooked after that. I mean, it was hopeless.